Um, the Kansas City Chiefs finished the 2025 season with a 6-11 record and missed the playoffs for the first time since 2014. And for a franchise that has been to 5 Super Bowls in the last 6 years, that sentence alone should tell you just how dramatic of a fall this was. It was a long, painful year in Kansas City. They started 0-2. They eventually climbed back to 5-3 after a Week 8 win over the Commanders. And for a brief moment there, the football world was doing what it always does, assuming the Chiefs' magic was going to kick in and that Patrick Mahomes was just going to will this team back to another AFC Championship game. But it didn't happen. They lost 8 of their final 9 games. And to make things significantly worse, Patrick Mahomes tore his ACL during that stretch, which changed the entire calculus of what this offseason needs to look like. So in today's video, we are breaking down exactly how the Kansas City Chiefs got here, what their realistic options are this offseason, and what this team needs to do in both free agency and the 2026 NFL draft to get back to competing for championships. There is a lot to cover. So before we get into it, please like the video. A football will appear when you do, and it means the world to this channel. Now let's get into it. To truly understand where the Chiefs are right now, you have to start with the NFL draft, because that is where this whole story begins. And the most important thing to understand about how the Chiefs built their dynasty is that it was never just Patrick Mahomes. It was Patrick Mahomes surrounded by smart draft decisions that gave him cheap, productive players on rookie contracts for years at a time. And the best example of that, the class that I think genuinely put him over the top and separated him from every other team in football during their run, was the 2022 draft class. Now, you have to remember the context of that offseason. The Chiefs had just traded Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins for a haul of picks, and the football world thought they had lost their minds. And I will say this clearly. I believe that if the Chiefs do not make that trade, they probably do not win back-to-back Super Bowls in 2022 and 2023. They might have won one, but both. I think that trade is what made both titles possible, because what that trade allowed them to do was attack the 2022 draft with a clear philosophy, build the defensive side of the ball with multiple high picks, and load up with players who have NFL translatable traits. Not projects, not wild cards, proven football players who had shown the ability to do things at the college level that translate directly to winning at the next level. They started that class by trading up to select Trent McDuffie out of Washington at number 21 overall. McDuffie was a consensus top 15 talent, and getting him at 21 was a legitimate coup. And over the course of the years that followed, he proved every bit of that evaluation right. Multiple big plays in big games, a cornerback who can lock down the perimeter and who elevates the entire defense around him. Without Trent McDuffie, this dynasty looks different, and that is not hyperbole. Then they added George Karlaftis with the 30th pick, who has quietly put together a really solid career. 60-plus pressures in each of the last 3 seasons, and over 30 sacks in his career. Now, I know Chiefs fans have been frustrated with Karlaftis at times, and the contract conversations have not helped. But let me be direct about something. A late first-round pass rusher who produces at that level over a multi-year period is what success looks like at that draft slot. The 3rd pick in the draft is a different expectation than the 30th pick. Context matters. And beyond Karlaftis, that class also gave them Brian Cook at safety, Leo Chenal at linebacker, Jalen Watson at defensive back, and Isaiah Pacheco at running back. And yes, they also took Sky Moore in the 2nd round, and that one did not work out. But overall, that is an A-plus draft class. That is a home run. And when you have that kind of production on rookie scale contracts all at the same time, it keeps your championship window open for years because cheap quality production is the lifeblood of sustained contention in the NFL. But here's the catch, and this is the part that I do not think gets discussed enough when people talk about the Chiefs. When those contracts expire and it is time to pay those players what they are actually worth on the open market, you have to be able to replace what you are losing. You have to keep drafting well. You have to keep finding guys who can step in and contribute, and that is a lot easier to say than to do. Anybody can sit down and say we should extend Patrick Mahomes, we should pay Travis Kelce, we should keep Chris Jones and Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. Those are the obvious decisions. The hard part is finding the next wave of contributors who allow you to keep making those decisions without gutting your roster depth. And that is exactly where the Chiefs started to run into trouble. And the 2023 draft class is the clearest example of this. And I want to be honest about it because I think it is one of the more significant reasons they are in the position they are in right now. Their first round pick was Felix Anudike-Uzomah, and I am going to say what a lot of people have danced around that pick has been a bust. And I do think there is a meaningful distinction between a draft bust and a draft disappointment. A bust is a player who was taken in the first round and simply has not been a functional NFL player. And Anudike-Uzomah through the 2023, 2024, and 2025 seasons, the last of which he missed entirely, has not made an impact. He has been regularly outplayed by players on the depth chart below him. He is entering the final year of his deal in 2026, and barring a transformation that nothing in his career to this point has suggested is coming, his time in Kansas City will likely expire with his contract. Their second-round pick in 2023 was SMU receiver Rashee Rice, and this one is genuinely complicated because there have been moments, real moments, where Rashee Rice has flashed the kind of ability that made you think, okay, this guy could be a legitimate number one receiver in this league. But he has only played in 28 of a possible 51 regular season games through 3 seasons. Durability, availability, consistency, those are the things that separate good players from great ones. And through 3 years, Rice has not been able to demonstrate those things on a consistent basis. And when your second round pick from a class that was supposed to reload your roster is dealing with those kinds of question marks, it creates real problems down the line. They also took Juan Morris in the third round, who was a reasonable pick for where he was selected. You are not drafting a third-round offensive lineman and expecting him to be a Hall of Famer, and context matters there. Their best day 3 pick from that class was defensive back Jamari Connor, who has been serviceable but not a difference maker. All things considered, the 2023 class, after that franchise-changing 2022 class, was a significant step backwards. And the 2024 class had real limitations of its own. The Chiefs only had 2 picks inside the top 130 in that draft, and whenever that is the case, you are fighting the odds. There's a reason players fall to day 3. There's a reason polished, ready to contribute players go in the first 2 rounds. And when your own draft day position is compromised because of where you finish in the standings, the price of sustained success, it creates a compounding problem. Now, Xavier Worthy was their first round selection in 2024. And I want to be fair here because I think the expectations that were placed on Worthy from the moment he ran a 4.21 at the combine were completely disconnected from reality. People looked at that 40 time, looked at the fact that he was going to Kansas City to play with Patrick Mahomes, and immediately projected a Tyreek Hill level impact. And that was never a fair standard. But 2 years in, the durability concerns are real for a player with his frame, and the question of what his ceiling is as a receiver, whether he ever becomes more than a complementary weapon, has not been answered in the way the Chiefs needed it to be. Their second round pick was Kingsley Suamataia, who looks to be their starting left guard going into 2026 for a late second round offensive lineman that is a fine outcome. But it is not the kind of class that closes the gap between where you are and where you need to be. And this is where I want to shift the conversation, because I think there is a misconception floating around in football circles that the Chiefs are just going to be the Chiefs again. That Mahomes comes back from the ACL, they sort out a few roster issues, and the machine starts back up. And I understand why people think that, because we have watched Mahomes overcome every obstacle this team has faced for the better part of a decade. But I want to make a point that I think is genuinely important for Chiefs fans to sit with. The AFC is not the same conference it was 3 or 4 years ago. The Broncos just won 14 games and made the AFC Championship game. The Chargers won 11 games and made the playoffs for the third time in 4 years. The New England Patriots went to the Super Bowl in their first year under Mike Vrabel. The Buffalo Bills still have Josh Allen, who is one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks alive. The Chiefs swept to the Chargers this year, lost to the Chargers, swept them. The Raiders beat them in Week 18. Teams have been building while Kansas City was winning, and several of them are now legitimate threats. The window is not closed, but the path back to dominance is not as simple as it looked from the outside a few years ago. Now let's get into what the Chiefs should actually do this offseason, because this is where things get genuinely interesting. The first thing people see when they look at the Chiefs cap situation is that they are approximately $62 million over the cap entering 2026. And that sounds alarming, but it is really not the crisis that it appears to be on the surface, because of how modern NFL front offices have learned to structure contracts. Cutting Jawan Taylor immediately saves $20 million. Restructuring Patrick Mahomes' contract frees up another $45 million. And if you continue restructuring deals for Chris Jones, Trey Smith, and Nick Bolton, you can get this team to over $40 million under the cap for the 2026 season. If you also restructure Creed Humphrey and George Karlaftis, you can push that number closer to $60 million in available space. The Chiefs are not in financial hell. They have options, and smart front offices know how to create space. Now, the conversation that I think defines this offseason more than any other is what happens with Trent McDuffie. There's been real discussion about whether the Chiefs extend him or whether they go a different direction and trade him to free up resources, and I understand both sides of this. McDuffie had some struggles in 2025, but he is still a young cornerback with a legitimate track record of being one of the better players at his position. If they do trade him, I would expect them to receive at minimum an early second-round pick and quite possibly a fourth-round pick accompanying it, given how teams value high-quality cornerbacks and how thin this draft class is at premium positions. If that trade happens, the Chiefs suddenly have 3 picks in the top 40 of the 2026 draft, and that completely changes what this offseason can look like. With that kind of draft capital and cap flexibility, here is what I think makes sense for Kansas City. In the first round, I would love to see them select Ohio State wide receiver Carnell Tate. Now, I know that whenever you hear the phrase contested catch receiver, there's sometimes a concern that goes along with it about separation, but Tate is a different profile than what that label typically conjures. He is 6'3", around 200 pounds. He runs routes with sophistication for his size, and he wins in situations where the ball placement requires precise timing and body control. My closest comparison for him in this draft process is George Pickens, and if you know what Pickens has become in this league, you understand why I am excited about Tate. This is the kind of receiver who makes Patrick Mahomes even harder to defend, and filling that need in the first round with a talent like Tate would be a significant upgrade for what the Chiefs are putting around their quarterback. In the second round, they need to address the cornerback position with someone like South Carolina's Nick Scorton or another high-quality cover corner from this class to start rebuilding the secondary depth that has been eroding. And with their third selection in that top 40 range. I would target offensive lineman Caleb Lomu out of Utah to solidify the right tackle spot, which is a position that has needed attention for longer than the Chiefs would probably like to admit. In free agency, the two names I keep coming back to are Trey Hendrickson and Bree Hall. Hendrickson is the premier pass rusher available in this class, and the Chiefs desperately need someone who can take pressure off Chris Jones, who, and I will be direct about this, has had moments over the last year where it has been noticeable that he is not giving everything he has on every single play. That is partly a product of being asked to be the entire pass rush for stretches of time with limited help around him. Adding Hendrickson changes that dynamic entirely and gives Karlaftis a running mate who can force offensive coordinators to actually game plan for both sides of the formation. And on the running back side, Bree Hall on a 1 or 2 year deal gives them a legitimate ball carrier, which they desperately need, given that the only running back under contract for 2026 right now is a 7th round pick from last year's class. The 2025 draft class gives me real reason for optimism about the future, by the way. Josh Simmons is a player I think has legitimate franchise left tackle potential, and that is not something you say lightly. Omar Normalot suffered a season-ending injury last year, which is a shame because I think he was on track for a breakout role. And Jalen Royals is a player who I think could carve out a meaningful role in 2026 as the offense continues to evolve. Here is where I land on all of this. The Kansas City Chiefs are not done. Patrick Mahomes coming back from a ACL injury changes the equation dramatically because as long as he is on the field, this team has a chance to compete for a championship. But the idea that they are going to seamlessly return to the level of dominance they showed in 2024 without making significant changes to this roster is not realistic. The AFC is caught up. The draft classes of 2023 and 2024 did not provide the depth this team needed. And the financial structure that served them so well during their dynasty run now requires careful navigation. But the pieces are there to get back. The cap space can be created. The draft capital, especially if the McDuffie trade happens, gives them the ammunition to add multiple impact players. And with Mahomes healthy, the ceiling of this team is as high as any team in the conference. This is not a rebuild. This is a reload, but it has to be executed correctly, and the margin for error is smaller than it has been in a long time. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please like and subscribe. We are closing in on a major milestone on this channel, and I genuinely cannot thank you enough for the support you have shown Andy Reid Universe. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day.